Again, all right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It took a long time to start tonight. I don't know why. Oh, Egan's in the wings, ready to bring the ratings down. I might invite him in a second. I'll just see if I'm brave enough. Where should we start? I know what we'll start with. Mark was just talking about the M600 crash, and it actually spoke exactly to what we were talking about last week with training, proficiency, and currency. Is that the one we were talking about?
I think it was, yes. The M600, and they didn't know what to do when it came out of GPS.
That's right. Came out of GPS and couldn't fly the thing, could they?
Yeah, but that's normal. Do they fly without GPS? What's that funny button on the top?
That's the place where you put your stickers. That's the sticker patch area, isn't it?
No, because that thing is so small and tiny. Because it doesn't matter. I think it's not important. You have those big sticks on the front, so that little button on the back is not important. I'm sure of it.
I think I think you're probably right. Did you see that accident, Ian?
Yes, unfortunately, it's a classic example of someone who should never have been allowed behind the controller. The M600 is what, a 6.5, 7,000 pound aircraft without payload. It has 6 batteries on board. It has the DJI A3 controller. It might have even had the A3 Pro with triple IMU sensors and compasses.
It was the Pro version, and it's not a straight A3. It's
no. Well, it's the same hardware. It's modified firmware, so it's the same hardware. The reality is, it's a classic example of someone who shouldn't have been allowed behind the wheel. That is a flying blender at that point. It's a big aircraft. I haven't flown an aircraft that big for a while, and I would be extremely touchy.
Oh my God! No, I can tell you, I flew a lot of those M600s. They're very, very good flyers.
Oh yeah. There's no question about that.
They're absolutely fantastic. Only perhaps better than its flying style is the old S900 with the upgraded arms. Those were crazy.
Yeah, it's a super aircraft. The problem is, it's what DJI have done best, which caused this. They've built it so easy to fly that anyone thinks they can fly it without properly understanding all of the implications. Now, the interesting thing is here, there's no requirements in any of the training to understand really what the difference is in the aircraft modes is. And whilst you do a flight test, and actually, he should have done a flight test in ATTI. He should have done it. We all had to do it. But then again, it was not. Is it really a flight test, and is it all really just maintain the aircraft's position and flick the switch? That's the problem.
The thing is, I granted the learning curve. You don't born a natural flyer like some people that are natural flyers. But the thing is, stuff happens, and that's why I when I teach someone, I tend to ask the people to please fly on a simulator to start with, and I'll check with you on a simulator. It's not the same thing. We all know it's not the same thing, but come on, at least it is something that will prevent us.
I'm going through here. Was this the one?
No. Not
that one. That was another one.
So here's the thing, though, that I find. If I was given a new aircraft to fly, so let's say you gave me the M600 and I've never flown it before, I will go out to my test site, I will read the manual, I will then fly the aircraft half a dozen times, and I will put that aircraft through the ringer because I want to know what it's going to do when I'm doing fast ascent, descent, and I'm going to practice it in ATMI mode as well because I want to know how it's going to behave. I don't think it's a lack of training from an NQE or an RAE. I think it's a lack of the pilots themselves not doing enough background on the aircraft they were flying. I don't think they did themselves any favors by just thinking it was going to fly like an Inspire or, you know, a Mavic or something.
Well, I was just trying to find the report because it is exactly what we spoke about last week with ongoing training and stuff, wasn't it? But they had some great phrases in it. That's why I'm trying to find the actual report. I should have had it ready. But
he didn't switch it in, did he? This was the problem here. You know, okay, it's fairly easy. If it had been a situation of he switched it into ATTI and lost orientation, that happens. You know, that can happen to the best of us. The situation here was it appears the pilot didn't just choose to put it in the aircraft. Now, technically, the aircraft would have entered it anyway, because the way the DJI system works is if there's a problem with the compass, it'll toilet bowl, and if it does it to a point, it should drop to ATTI, but it doesn't always do it. And what is common on those aircraft is one of the antennas coming loose. That's the most common thing because they fold down. And the most common cause of issues on them is when the guys set the aircraft up, don't set the antennas up properly, one of the GPS or compasses shifts, and it causes it. Now, I do know the A3, it didn't have the same type of redundancy we've come to expect, like on a Cube or any of the Ardra Pilot-based multiple IMU controllers or with the multiple EKFs. Doesn't quite work the same with the DJI. It's a bit of a funny system how it switches, and I've had a play with it on the bench, and it doesn't behave the way you would expect it to always. So it is possible it didn't shift out. The reality is it is an accident. No one was hurt. What goes up might come down. Hopefully next there wasn't too much of an expensive payload on board as well, because the aircraft's one thing, but there could have been a 10-gram payload on that. It
was an accident. Nobody was hurt. Is that an acceptable answer? Well, let's have another one.
Come on, that's a crash report done by the man that sells the chairs. But
look, it just proves you can crash a 600 size aircraft and it still doesn't really do any harm. That's how dangerous it was. So let's not overblow this.
No,
you know,
Ian's right. And I would be more scared if it was, for instance, an Inspire 2 launched at full speed.
She's quick. She's quick.
Yeah, you get an Inspire 2 at 80 kilometers per hour. That's scary.
You know, if you look at the funny with this, we have a pilot who, I don't mean this in a bad way, but didn't really know what he was doing with that aircraft. It crashed.
Or couldn't. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, benefit of the doubt. And it still didn't kill anyone. It still didn't decapitate a child's head. It still didn't wipe out half of the area. So at the end of the day, things happen. What goes up might comes down. And the problem is, we are trying to use, and they use aviation standards of safety when it suits them. So when it has to be safe, drones are dangerous, we're going to use aviation levels of safety. Yet when something does go wrong, it's still a fairly minor incident, yet all hell breaks loose, you know.
Well, and hello there, Adrian, in the comments, so I won't type away my noisy keyboard. And hello, Rob, who's some DoD hands out 8.4 million recovery. Maybe I'm going to send Rob a link. Maybe you can join us and tell us about that, Rob. Plenty of people will give us a thumbs down already. We like thumbs down. We encourage interaction of any sort at all. We don't
probably the M600 flyer.
No, if it was him, I stood up for him, because come on, guys. If you don't fly drones, or you have a background on RC, those a strange situation, you have to practice. For instance, I go out and do training for guys that operate our automated drones on emergency procedures, and if anything goes wrong, I have a standard procedure that I try to teach them all. But I saw them, because I forced errors on the system, and I saw them freeze. and that's the problem. When you freeze, and sometimes you freeze for 1-2 seconds, and that's enough for a drone to do 100 meters and do a lot of damage on those 100 meters. So when you go and train people, then you need to practice. And I tend to say to all the guys, please practice. Get yourself a small drone, fly manually, but practice.
Well, that's just what the AAIB said, and they had a great phrase for it, and I can't find it now. It's something about institutional memory loss or something.
We have to accept accidents happen. At the end of the day, an accident can happen. We've all screwed something into the ground at some point. More often it's on the first flight, let's be honest. Usually you've forgotten something, or you haven't buttoned something up, or you just, there's many things I've destroyed on the first flight. So at the end of the day, things happen.
I don't know.
Well, speaking about accidents, here he is talking about accidents happening, and he opens up. I was going to ask him to as well.
Exactly. Well, I don't know what you guys are talking about, because I never crash. I have aborted takeoffs and unscheduled landings only. And we'll leave it right there.
Controlled landing.
Uncontrolled or unscheduled, landings and aborted takeoffs.
Yeah,
but it can happen.
Bruce crashes his missiles all of the time.
Absolutely. Is Rob going to come in and tell us? Someone's pinging at the bottom of the page here. Oh, how do I let him in?
You're out of space. There's only 6.
There we are.
No, look at that.
No, we can have 10 now.
Did you upgraded?
There's the bloody
we've got a free upgrade. Yeah, he's got a proper headset and everything. So before we roll back to Patrick, because Patrick can wait, Rob, you put a link up. There. 84 million recovery funds to small unmanned companies, space firm. What is this about? Rob.
We can't hear you.
He can't hear us.
No,
can you hear her? There you go.
I just saw it too, so I'm still digesting it a little bit, but you can't hear me?
No, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Over.
All right.
So is that one of those firms, your company? That's the most... Oh, no, you work for a big company now, don't you? You don't need those funds now.
Oh, there's a crazy delay.
Yeah. Well, we understand it is about 1974 in Canada, isn't it?
Yeah, I won't comment on that.
No, that is terrible. Even there to assume. All right, well, let's move on to the main topic, the new Skydio machine. I was half expecting somebody from there to pitch up. They might yet. What do we think then? Are the two main players now Skydio and Parrot in America? Are they the big news?
By the way, we knew from the new Skydio by the Parrot CEO. So the Parrot CEO told us clearly that was Skydio. And you guys remember that I've been saying that Skydio needed to come up with an industrial approach. They started by releasing their SDK a couple of months, a little more than a year ago. And now they've, what it appears to be, they've come up with a good solution with those behaviors, patches, whatever you want to call it, to the standard drone. And the standard drone is what we would expect from these days. So it's a very small sensor with a very large zoom capability and a FLIR camera. And although they didn't tell the price, considering only the cost of the FLIR sensor, it will be around the same as the Parrot USA. So good for Skydio. It's good to see that the industry is not only based in Shenzhen.
It's big. It's fundamentally big, and it's two things. Okay, if we look at what got DJI to where they are. You know, it's not the first time they've had loads of competitors. If we go back far enough, 3DR did an outstanding job on the aircraft, but they what set DJI down a certain path was they integrated the camera, which did them a lot of favors early on, and they produced a very nice turnkey solution, and that propelled them quite well for quite a long time, and they've built many platforms off that. And if you look at all of DJI's aircraft, it's very much Lightbridge on the integrated cameras. They're the two fundamental pieces of tech that allowed them to get to where they are today and allow them to push forward. Now, what time has done is allowed others to catch up. And what you've got here is Parrot. There's nothing special about the Anafi USA. Spec is pretty much what we would expect. The real interesting is Skydio, because they're doing what no one else is doing with the visual stuff, and they're mixing that in with the integrated camera system. They've got Flare, and what's going to hurt DJI is that there's clearly backing on the US side. Personally, I think DJI are in very big trouble from a US market point of view. Specifically, so much so, I don't even know if the enterprise will continue. That's how much.
They pulled the plug on it, didn't they?
Changes have happened. They've let go of a lot of staff. But what I think is different this time is, and I think 3DR could have had it if they'd have had the backing from the country. That there wasn't the want of an American supported aircraft when 3DR was there. You know, you didn't have this pent up thing right now in the media and all of this.
Oh, I think
there's a little more to it than that, but
yeah, but it wasn't enough to push like it has today. Do you know, if you look, there's something has fundamentally shifted today.
Yeah, the Huawei announcement from the UK this morning, I think that also plays into this. And
yeah, exactly. I think, you know, companies are beginning to mistrust China more and more now, especially in the West. You know, and I think DJI are going to suffer because of it.
I think they've got a big problem. I think they have a massive problem. Hardware-wise, we know they'll make a great aircraft. They'll make another great aircraft. They'll make something that works really well. They'll put something on it which we haven't seen before. That side of it, they're very good at. The problem is it's not enough now. And
like I told you, like I told 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I think the M300 is a fundamental mistake on the part of DJI. It's the batteries are too large. That prevents a lot of moving around easily with the M300 from one location to the other. And it is a complex drone. It's not an easy solution drone. And if you want to be an industrial grade drone, either you go on that scale, you probably would go for an Alta. Yeah, granted, the cost will be less than 10K for the M300. The others will come a little below the price of the M300, but the M300 for me, in my opinion, has a fundamental flaw, which is too big.
Yeah, agreed.
Come on, Patrick. You're eager to say.
Yeah, this is a how long you got kind of thing, because you know, the 3DR thing, that was like I don't even know what you want to call that, but that was such a disaster. Silicon Valley hubris. I mean, they had it in the palm of their hands, and they just kind of fell apart. And you know, here in the United States, like, okay, you got the Parrot, and the interview that you did with Henri Gary was good, and Henri is a good guy. I like Henri. But you know, their hashtag, have you guys seen that? A drone you can trust. So, you know, I don't know, you know, from my perspective, when you're being mocked by the French, you know, you've hit like a new low. And that's what's happening there. So people are like, oh, the Parrot, you know, it's great. And it is, it's great. You know, I love it. The radio, you know, I think it was being made by like the people, you know, in Shenzhen, whatever the case. Wi-Fi, I don't like Wi-Fi control. You know, I did a lot of teaching in San Francisco, and in areas that have lots of Wi-Fi, you get control and video drop out in about 15 feet. That's not what I'd call an industrial solution. And I believe Skydio uses the same radio. So Skydio, you know, they've got this new system and it's great. You know, they got the CARES money from the government because this is an essential technology, although people don't know where all the parts, pieces, and components come from. Because we're in America here, we're suffering from what I'd like to call hardcore denial about our aerospace sector, which has been basically gutted and sent to China. I don't know about the respective countries that you guys live in, but that's kind of what we're facing here. So, you know, they had that. All these drone companies here got PPP money. You know, these are VC-backed companies that don't really make any money. And
we must remember that Skydio yesterday announced a further 100 million investment from a company, from a fund related to Siemens. So that's 100 million plus.
And they knew it was coming. I mean, you know, they've been talking, you know, they've talked to me about maybe doing something with SUAS News, like a webinar or something. I mean, everybody knows this stuff is in the pipeline, but everybody's hitting this COVID money like it's going out of style. And I don't want to be, it sounds judgmental or whatever, but, you know, you got, 100 million in the pipeline. I guess you'll take 4 million more, but I don't know. What I do know is, I've seen the Skydio fly. I also was, I asked them too, I talked to the marketing guy, I noticed like Drone Girl got a Skydio. And I said, how come no one at SUS News got a Skydio? We take good selfies too, And of course the guy laughed, but, I'd like to put it through its paces. I'd like to see what this thing can do. I saw it. I did see it fly, the first version, when I was in Texas. And, it was a little rainy that day and a little windy, so we didn't get the full demo. All we got is it flew out of the box about 3 feet and landed back in the box. 3 feet, landed in the box. Yeah, I wasn't critical. They were in front of a potential customer, but I'm like, if this is going to be like the solution here, it should be able to handle a little wind and a little rain. Yeah, it's me. Also, I asked, a lot of people were asking the question is what happened to the prop guards? And I believe the CEO was the guy that said, oh, we have software. I don't need prop guards. Which to me, at this point in the game with drones and software and mishaps and glitches and all the rest of it, I think that's hubris and bravado. Personally, that's my take on it. Send Gary the hate.
I think that well, yeah, yeah. Been a lot of that recently. I think
that's half of your day. It's like I don't know what.
These days, come on, and we all seen this. These days is not so much the drone. The drone is, it's already an off-the-shelf thing, be it with an open source or closed source software running on an STM32 CPU or running on an NVIDIA TX board. They just fly, and more or less, they just fly. The thing is what you do with all the peripherals around it. And in there, I would say that Skydio has an advantage because of the route they took. It was a risky route, going full vision processing on board. But apparently they managed to crack it. And from all the experience that we've seen, they cannot produce enough drones for the demands. I was trying to buy one to be sent to a friend of mine in US, and just forget it.
And that's what I like about that company is, unlike what happens in Silicon Valley too often, they did a thing, and now they get the money, and hopefully do more things with it, expand production, make more products and improve the products. But it was totally opposite from what Silicon Valley does very often, especially in the drone space, is they get the money with the promise they're going to do a thing. They have no idea how to do it. They just say they're going to. and then they don't, right? And we've seen that time and time again. So they did the opposite. They proved themselves first. It's a pretty impressive product for a first shot. Although I mean, this is the second one, but even the first one was pretty decent from what I saw.
There's a video conference of Edinburgh, I believe in MIT, where they were flying a plane in a garage.
That's
at the time they were using LiDAR. They were using the Oculus LiDAR, and the autonomous flight inside the garage. Come on.
Yeah. That was extraordinary, that video.
It was more impressive for that. No,
way
it was
more
impressive than the flights of the Skydio drones flying around the forest.
It's the interesting thing with this is the reality is this is now about there being another turnkey solution that we haven't had. At the end of what DJI have always been good at is providing an off-the-shelf product. Take it out, it works, it does what people expect it to do. 6 months ago, if you'd have taken away everyone's Phantoms, Mavics, and M200s, there was basically nothing that you would be able to replace them with. Now, today, we have 2 aircraft in the small enterprise and search and rescue market, which can directly do what DJI are doing. Now, all they have to do is scale that up because the base platform is there. So now it's about, if we want an M2 or M300 size aircraft, it's simply about payload, battery, but the basics are now in place. They've got a platform they can build upon. And I think what's very interesting here is there is now actually an option. Every time, and again, the last time this happened was actually 3DR, because everything else since hasn't really been an option. But, Rob knows better than anyone about the rights and wrongs and ups and downs of 3DR. But the reality is, I think they were probably 3 years too early. I've always said this. They were 3 years. If they had done the same thing 3 years later, I think it would have been a very different thing. But Skydio,
I think that's regulatory though too. I have to say that part of the success of DJI is being able to sell around the world, where in the United States we have ITAR and you can't sell.
ITAR is that's the very reason they were in Mexico, wasn't it? And people forget, and most people don't know about ITAR, to be fair. They don't even know that that's a problem. And it's not just the hardware, it's the idea itself. There's a certain American autopilot that was invented in Australia because the guy got on a plane, had his idea in Australia, wrote it down in Australia, and then the idea became invented in Australia so they could sell it around the world. And that's what you have to do. So even the idea, the American government even owns your ideas.
I still remember trying to buy gadgets on the 3DR shop and could not buy them because of the ITAR rules.
Now let's be fair, because the ITAR thing, I told Chris that he was going to be facing our ITAR controls. You know what you're talking about? I know what I'm doing. And then they came down on him. Now they had friends in the Obama administration, and they were able to fix it in record time. But ITAR is a retroactive thing. The guy could be in the office and, oh yeah, this looks great, you're good. Next guy comes in, oh, what are you doing? This is control technology. You got to go out and find everything you sold and bring it back.
If only we had somebody that knew about ITAR and control technology in this hangout. If only we knew someone that has dabbled with those issues in the past in some sort of cruise missile configuration. If only.
Well, I did want to talk about New Zealand too, because there was another guy, and Bruce, you may remember this guy. He was like an MP in New Zealand. First name was Trevor. Forget his last name right off the top of my head.
Trevor Rogers. Yeah.
Trevor Rogers. 2008. Trev had a helicopter that was a autonomous UAV rescue helicopter. And they wanted to start using it in the Himalayas to rescue, these fools that go up there and go hiking and fly off the mountains. And same situation where, it was inside the guy's head. The government in New Zealand said, hey, this could be a dual-use technology and could become a weapon. So you can't export it. And if we all know what the market for cruise missiles and rescue helicopters is in New Zealand. It's small. And didn't he wind up doing jail time, him and the wife?
Yeah, because it was a big scam. I knew someone on the inside. All they ever had was a fiberglass mock-up shell, and that was it. And every time you looked at it, it was getting more and more impressive, and there were all these deals on the table. It was just about to take off. Typical, shyster type build-up. Every time a new press release with new unnamed buyers who are secretly looking at it, and deals that are about to be signed, and it was going to fly on Mount Everest where there was no oxygen, but that's okay because it was a diesel. And I sort of, unfortunately, I followed it all the way through, but I didn't write much about it because I was also developing some UAV technology at the time. It would have been a little unethical for me to try and criticize the guy that was a competitor. But it was just a giant. This was the guy, when he was an MP, he wanted to censor the internet. So you couldn't use the internet without a license because you could run across bad stuff like Gary's Pornhub channel, and so they wanted to protect the world from that. He was a strange guy.
Trevor's a friend of mine. We're not like tight bros, but he's a good guy. And he was doing the Silicon Valley Sunshine early on in drones. This thing, it slices, it dices, it does everything. And it's like, hey, sounds good to me, man. I'm gullible. I bought that whole 3DR thing, hook, line, and sinker. But anyway, the point with that is certain countries do, at the time and in the mid 2000s and whatnot, a lot of countries, UAVs were military grade weapons. And, you get laughed at for insinuating that these things would be coming out of China soon and $1,000 and all the rest of that. DJI still makes a great product. I think DJI's problems are self-inflicted. I got into it on LinkedIn. I know, surprise. With Coleman, I basically said, hey, I'd act as a third-party investigator to hire people to find out if this Chi-Comms thing's going on. Oh, it's your narrative, not my narrative. It's the American government's narrative, the DoD's narrative. I think that the full frontal going after the U.S. government, you're insane, President Trump stuff, that did not serve them well. And they're spending millions now to lobby to get DJI taken out of proposed regulation that would ban them. So I think they're their own worst enemies. I think they would have been a little bit better off maybe using the 3DR Chris Anderson model and saying, oh, hey, yeah, well, maybe we are collecting a little data, but what we're trying to do is we're developing some AI so we can make better systems or trying to learn what's going on there. And if you want to opt out, bro, opt out. But that's not how they did it. They dug their heels in. You're crazy. We're not collecting any data, which, whatever. And I think they've created problems for themselves with the government. And here in the United States, basically, if you're not in business with DJI, you're not in business. It's a 90% monopoly. Will Skydio be big enough? Can they produce enough product? The same with Parrot.
Well, they're a bit the same as 3DR a little bit, isn't it? Can they get the product out there? That is the worry. A friend of mine's ordered one here. We still wait for the version 2. Everyone waits.
But can you run TikTok on a Mavic?
Come on. It's again the same thing that I've discussed several times. No one is going to be able to compete with DJI if they don't establish a good enough retail network with distribution channels, support channels, all that. They have to do it, and they have to come up with a good solution. So if they want to fight DJI.
Yeah, but even still, you look at the investment that DJI has had. I mean, I did that story about it. It looks like they had like $1.5 billion in investment.
I wonder why. From the government. I wonder why that happened.
Yeah, from the new China Life Insurance Company, which is 48% owned by the PRC. So, and I'm not even saying it's a bad thing, man. It's good and all the rest of that, but. That's going to be hard to compete with here in the United States. Our costs of doing business and wages and all of the other, let's say, burdens associated with manufacturing in the United States, that's going to be
but part of that, we'll talk about this. Hang on, let's stop sharing this. We'll talk about this in a second. Park all that, all this story about burdens of cost and all that. What about just not having great products there in the first place? What about never actually being at the cutting edge of it, even though you say you are? Well, not you particularly, but you know what I mean. It's been and then the Silicon Valley hype that got on top of it. The American look at all the stuff that goes out to the Sandy Wars. That's it's just model grade stuff that got away with no certification hoops to jump through because there were Sandy Wars. If you tried to turn up with a Puma now in a lot of places, they'd say, well, no way, you're not getting that through. But they've got what are those fabulous contracts you've got over the limitless contracts that they've got for them?
That's a rigged game, man. That's a total rigged game, and I've been saying it for years. I mean, this thing has shifted. So in the early 2000s, the DoD vendors had control of the integration process, and we're definitely trying to pull up the ladder, keep everyone out. We know what we're doing. But all of
do you remember all those? I'm butting in on you again. Do you remember all the first round of bin sizes that came out exactly matched the AeroVironment range of gear? Funny thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they said that I was a crank again. I mean, I was in the running for a job over at AeroVironment.
So they didn't get it all wrong.
No, they didn't get it all wrong. Exactly. No,
I did. I was in the running to be the commercial guy for AeroVironment, and then I did a New Yorker interview, and the guy they're just trying to. I'm sorry, the bins were just the 2 kilos with the Raven weighing 4.4 pounds. I mean, I don't dabble in the metric system because it gives me heartburn. No, I'm kidding. But, I'm like, I came in late on the call that day on the Ark, and they were like, yeah, we decided the first bin's going to be 2 kilos.
Yeah.
2 kilos converts to what? 4.4 pounds. And what DoD vendor has an aircraft that weighs 4.4 pounds? The crickets were chirping on the phone, but we all know it was the Raven.
But it was all of them as well. They had the 1 kilo in there as well, and that was that little thing they had. I can't remember what that was called, but each bin exactly fitted something in their product range.
Well, we're going because the 55 pounds was so the Scan Eagle could fit in there. I mean, the whole this whole deal, it's just been like a comedy of errors, And then they left that behind, and then they moved into the regulation with now what would be I would consider controlled by the Chinese, which that's not too bad either. I mean, I think that they should have a part in it, but I don't think they should be driving the bus. I think they should probably be in the background there speaking. But I think these are problems that we're running into. The other thing we're running into with these companies is the same deal I mentioned that Skydio is hiring people from GoPro that worked on the Karma. Is that the smartest move? People, why are you taking pot shots at these people? Reality and the Karma speak for themselves. That's all I got to say. So if you want to hire, and Intel does it,
and a lot of the Karma people were leftovers from 3DR.
Yeah, I was going to say that but
sailing forward faster, fail up.
Rob said not Rob, sorry. Patrick said something interesting earlier about what DJI did wrong. If you look at from the front end, DJI did 3 mistakes in the enterprise market in the US. Number 1, they refused to do US manufacturing. No, regardless of cost doesn't come into it. Okay, ignore cost a second. They did this whole government edition, which was a total ruse just to try and say, yeah, we've done something. If they'd have done 3 things, US manufacturing at any cost, doesn't matter what it cost, people would have paid it. Number 2, then created a custom level of software that was only in the US. And 3, turn off the damn communications. And that's all they had to do. Produce the app that did nothing. Not the version of the app where you could go turn it off if you chose to, but turn it off. And the funny thing is, they had it all in their lap. They had everything in their lap. And I honestly think they have potentially lost it all here forever. It's the start, but this is some very interesting steps. And all it's going to take is Skydio to build on this, Parrot to build on it. They got the government money. Keep them in business, keep them going. If they can survive longer than 3DR managed to, keep producing product, build the next one. Yes, the domestic market is handy. It brings a lot of coin in, but there's no margin in the domestic market anyway. The margin is in the government contracts and the high-end contracts. That's where the margin is.
Margins you're talking about. Louis, talking about margins, what would, say, an M300 cost in Europe?
I believe the current running price for an M300 is below the M210. And it can be had it for what, 12,000 euros.
And what sort of price would that be in Brazil, based on your current experience?
Oh my God! The M210 V2 is around 30,000 euros. Give or take a few. So yeah. That's fine. Now, the thing is, all these regulations and all these big drones are, in some countries, are almost impossible to be operated. DJI already, come on, let's look at the latest leaks came from the Brazilian regulatory authority, Anatel. So they have to go through hoops to certify the drones in Brazil. Brazil is a huge market for that, and Brazil is very protective of their own manufacturers. And for DJI to invest at the cost that the drones cost in Brazil, I really don't know. I think I agree with the others regarding DJI. I'm not seeing them, at least on the market where there is margin, and there is significant margins, is the industrial market, and I don't see them. I don't see a push for people to get the M300. I see the dealers trying to forcibly get customers to get M300s. I see DJI discontinuing the M210s, and they're pushing for M300s, and I'm not very sure why they are pushing so much for the new drone.
If Skydio and Parrot have cracked an AeroVironment contract, I wish I could remember the fantastic terminology they use in those American documents, which basically says, "We hereby give you a license to print money." It's a infinite contract. Yeah, it's like an infinite contract or something like that.
Cost plus.
Sorry, say again.
Cost plus contract.
I don't know, but it is like if you secure that contract, then you're there. You are there. You've made it. You've no need to worry about any other market. If either of those companies land that, then they'll forget the rest of us. They're there.
Well, funny you say that, because that you were talking about the sandy waters and all the rest of that, and everybody could put a happy face on those systems because nobody knew what was happening to those systems. But it was so bad with the Scan Eagle that Boeing, you had to be trained and certified by Boeing to crash their aircraft or rip wings off of their aircraft. But the government gave them a contract that was cost plus, and they just kept fixing these things as time went on. And the same thing with the with AeroVironment. They'd probably be mad that you say that, but their systems are complicated compared to DJI systems. Now, the other funny thing, with DJI, Gene Robinson and I tried to get DJI to do government drones in 2014. Same with Aurora Flight Sciences. Said, hey, fire departments and police departments could get COAs. There's no money in that. I got red spray paint right here, with fire right on there. It'd be great. With the FLIR cameras that were available or whatever. At the time, though, DJI was a different company. DJI used to be a camera company, and they wanted to be the company behind the people behind the camera. And I think the, let's say, overall image of DJI has changed to one that's like kind of an 800-pound gorilla. Don't tell us, get out of our way. Definitely not much of a community company anymore like they used to be, or like 3D Robotics was. And I would say, even 3D Robotics, I think they were given a lot of leeway because people felt like they were part of a community. Did you guys agree with me or disagree with me?
Yeah, I think they tried to be that way.
So what are we going to say, Robert? What are we going to say?
It's fair to say that, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, there was the Hydropilot aspect of it, which felt okay. The anti-DJI side, let's say, it's not DJI, so therefore we're going to back it. And then on the flip side of it, you had the openness of part. Okay, the Solo wasn't open really. If you look at it, it wasn't really an open source platform in any real way. Okay, there's a version of Hydropilot now. There's open software now, but it wasn't completely open like the open hardware was. Let's just say the gimbal wasn't. Was the gimbal ever opened up, Rob? I'm trying to remember.
I don't think the gimbal was. I mean, the flight software was. It was running Hydropilot. The flight controller was, but yeah, they had the other bits. What was running on the gimbal, things like that were not open. Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting bit, the bit everyone wanted, the smartphone.
Yeah. Now there was open source software like Linux and such, running on those. But they were not letting people see that stuff. And that became an issue, right?
Let's not forget that 3DR were truly stuffed by GoPro, really.
Oh yes, well and truly.
That's where
there was a number of things. I mean, I think I still have the emails. Be careful what I say here, but
yeah, I know we've all got to be careful.
I say what I can back up. I mean, I've got emails between me and Chris, 2013, I think, when brushless gimbals had just become a thing, right? And seeing some of the results, and I was one of the only mechanical engineers at that time sort of involved with the whole project, and I said, this brushless gimbal thing, this is going to revolutionize everything. This is going to make this revolution in consumer aerial videography. This is going to be the biggest thing since sliced bread. He didn't see it. So about a year passed, and then that's when the Solo thing ramped up. And I tried to get him. I said, you guys need. I think they were working on the maybe they're working in the Iris at the time, and they said, but you've got to have a brushless gimbal. This is going to be the thing. And I'll be the guy. I'll do it. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'll design the thing for you. But he just didn't see it. So time passed, and then they started the Solo. By that point, they had realized that Solo had to have a gimbal that came with it, but they lost so much time. And so they're behind the 8 ball. They farmed it out to somebody else. I don't know why they didn't come to me. But I was in San Francisco visiting another company I was working with, and I stopped in their offices, and I saw the gimbal before it was released, and I was shocked at how bad it was. And I told them, but I think it was too late to do anything about. So then my concerns were dismissed, and it all came to be true. But that was a piece of the timeline where so much time was lost, and that gimbal was a major part of the reason of why Solo failed. There was a few core technology problems. The gimbal was one, and the GPS performance, was another. I mean, it was just, when I first got mine, I couldn't believe how bad it was. And there was always excuses made about, it's just, it's the GoPro's leaky. Well, I can put this GoPro beside my, I'll hang it underneath my, I had a flame wheel with a Pixhawk on it, with a 3DR GPS, and I don't have this problem, right? There's something's really wrong here, and it was just no. And we just launch it, and the shit hit the fan. Right?
And then the monkeys arrived. Do you remember that big advertising campaign?
Yeah.
Huge amount of money was spent on all that.
And if you look, it's funny because it was the time when DJI integrated that camera into the Phantom 3, and it was, because they didn't have it easy at the time before that. I don't know, guys. DJI were refused access to the same sensors. GoPro had tied up all of the stock of the sensors. DJI couldn't, on earlier models, get the umbrella SoC all the access to the Sony sensors. So that's why the Vision Plus didn't have the camera everyone wanted, and it was only when the numbers were in place that they could argue enough that GoPro was not the only bet to place for Umbrella and Sony, because they were the whole market at the time. You know, GoPro were the number one, that all that chipset was all going to that. But I remember, and it was GoPro really did screw them over, though. The once
Well, then
GoPro
screwed
it's
themselves
bad that
over
GoPro-
by not. They didn't want to play with DJI. That didn't work out well for them. They didn't play nicely with 3DR. That didn't work out nicely for them. They basically, it's not worked out nicely for them, has it?
No,
No,
and it's the shame of it is both companies basically couldn't work together. I don't know whose fault it was, both or one or the other.
GoPro.
It could be. But
Yeah,
I think at some point, GoPro, I guess initially had agreed to work with 3D Robotics, but then at some point said, hang on a second, we'll just make the whole thing ourselves, because these drone things are easy, right? We've got the hard part. We make the camera. These drone things are easy. We'll just do it ourselves, without having any idea what it really takes to make the aircraft side of it. And then the screwed over, and that was the GoPro interface was another big problem with the launch on the Solo. That was another critical.
There was no controls on day one, was there? The firmware wasn't available, if I remember.
I'm trying to remember. It was a while ago, and but that was the problem, right? Was the Solo was released in steps. First, you had the aircraft, and
with the cage. Why stick no gimbal? Why?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've still got one. I've got a white box prototype Solo with the gauge on it, and I don't know what the whole thing should have just been delayed, because it just set the language it was used on the initial releases was just so negative because of that, and it's like somebody releases a car. I mean, Ford's just releasing the new Bronco now, and then they say, hang on, but the transmission, not going to get the transmission,
That's okay. Put it in the car.
The transmission is going to be like 6 months.
Yeah.
So
But the problem is, it was being compared to the Phantom 3, which had a stabilized camera, and you lose. Yeah. You were never going to win at that point, were you? You'd have better just not release it and go in. We can't do anything until should have been with a gimbal and camera, or not at all.
Well, then it missed the Christmas release cycle, didn't it? It was into that Christmas release cycle. Then it's the following year.
But that's.
But you got to hand it to Colin Quinn, who had the I don't know what
he's a winner.
But as a rich man, right? He goes out there.
PowerPoint skills.
He goes out there and he tries to put a luster on the turd. Just fly the Solo around until the gimbal gets here. It's going to be great. And everybody's like, what's he talking about? But you got to give him credit. He went out there, he did it. The thing that was really funny, though, and this was another one where I probably lost us $50,000 or $60,000, Gary. I don't know if I ever came.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah.
No problem.
Honestly, it really pays. Really pays.
I know it does. But at the time when the Karma was finally going to come out, the Solo was like free falling in price, and they're like, "Yeah, we're going to launch the." And I go, well, what are you guys thinking for a price point on this on the Karma? And they're like, oh, well, $1,500, and it'll be great. It's a ground drone turret too, which was another, I don't get it. But I go, well, the Solo is like free falling as we talk. And every week it goes on, it goes down in price,
Now,
I remember.
Don't forget that DJI did the same thing, right? When they at the CES show where 3DR showed up to announce the Solo, they cut the price of the Phantom in half.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not forget that as well.
It was a race to the bottom, and GoPro's like, "Oh, this is worth $1,500 because it's a ground drone too."
But like, I never forget the first strip down images of the GoPro. The first people to look at it, the first image come out with the lid off, and I don't remember if you saw it, Rob, and you saw the GPS was located in the center of the ESCs, and you just stood there and went, "Who designed this?"
A monkey.
And even if you look at all of these tiny drones today, they all still put the ESCs on a separate board at the bottom of the aircraft out the way, at least with 3 or 4 mil separation. But it was there in the middle, and you just went. And I remember that they did that day, and I heard 4 or 5 fell out the sky on the first day.
On the hilltop when
From the
it was
hilltops,
windy as Billio, wasn't it? They did
Yeah.
who thought it was a good idea to do a launch on the end of a ski run or something at the top where the ski lift go to, and it was windy as Billio, and yeah, they were handing them out. There goes that one. There goes that one.
I tell you what it does remind me of.
The guy who thought it was a good idea to give the first solo to somebody from, I think it was Ceylon, who knew nothing about drones, had never flown one before, got it facing nose in, and then was like, left is right, right is left. I crashed it. They've got some bugs to work out.
Yeah.
Really?
Not as bad press, mind, as the Inspire 1 heading into the garage door. Don't forget that one. That was pretty bad press for them.
Yeah, but this was the first review, the first official review of the Solo. They gave it to this guy, and then he takes it up. He's got it in alt-hold mode, which is a non-GPS mode. And he hands off the sticks. The wind is blowing it away, and it's just, that's what they do. And he's like, it's flying away. No! Get your hands on it. You have to fly it in this mode. And how that
did the same. They did the same with the Karma. I mean, I was out on Treasure Island at SF Drone School, and they like, hey, we want to have these guys come over here and fly on the field. And they were people from various tech magazines that never flown a drone. And besides the battery thing and them falling out of the sky, they didn't really know what was going on. There's no way they could really review those drones. But I think in the drone industry, that's what you want. You want someone who's going to say it's great. You don't want to hear any bad news. Hence, Gary and myself not getting a Skydio.
It's not unique to the drone industry, Patrick. You've had it this week. I follow the camera industry a lot, and look, Canon released a new camera this week, and it's only gone in very specific people's hands for very good reason. It's not unique to this industry.
It goes to the ambassadors first.
It goes to the ambassadors, and it's funny. I remember Rob saying about the crash video. The one that reminds me of Solo, it was a funny one. Is, do you remember the one with the guy where it flipped upside down and it's skating around, and he's just standing there trying to control it for about 5 minutes as it's just skating around upside down on his pathway. It's a brilliant video. It's a brilliant.
My buddy Kevin Finisterre did that.
Yeah,
Kevin.
It might have been him. I know, or at least he publicized it. But I remember he was involved in that.
It was fun.
What he doesn't understand is that problem is so difficult. A lot of people sort of underestimate some of those problems. Where landing detection when you don't actually have a sensor for the ground. I'm touching the ground. That and or crash detection, getting it right. Is really hard when you're trying to avoid getting it wrong. Having shutdowns in the air and that sort of thing. So it was kind of, I was on the other side of that watching, the pundits saying, how can you not get this right? You have no idea how hard that is. That's a really hard problem.
Well, the irony is DJI had gone the other way, and they managed to get them to turn off quite well in flight for quite a period of time.
And that's the opposite problem.
Yeah, it was the good old LVC. But I tell you what it has made me think of. Drone launches are very boring these days. That's what it's reminded me of. We don't get any of this stuff anymore, do you?
No, it's we solved the not crashing problem around.
It's a commodity. Like I was saying, is all what you hang on the drone and what you use on the drone. We've seen the cameras. Now we are seeing 360 imagery. We are seeing real life imagery combined with the thermal imagery. And what else? I'm not seeing LiDAR. No, because the guys of Skydio proved that you don't need LiDAR. Perhaps only on certain specific situations that you need LiDAR to discover some Peruvian abandoned Mayan village. So
let's talk about this. I've had this picture waiting in the wings. You mentioned LiDAR, something unusual, Peru. We have a man in the room that's he's walked out of his room. Because I want to just get this in before I forget to get this in.
Haven't we seen this before? Hasn't this been around for like 5 years already?
Yeah, but I think there's one about to enter stage left. And tell us about it.
This one's a UK built. It's called the Skater, and it's from Petra Drones, and they're just local to me. Their workshop's literally 2 minutes down the road from me. And this is one of their new little products that's appeared. It is PICS in there. But yeah, it's for going out and getting water samples from hard to reach places. It's a great little machine, and it skates across the water as well. It does fly, but it's really good on the water as well. It's something different, not something you see every day.
Looks like they even made it out of a drink bottle.
It looks like it, but it's not. It's a custom
Words of encouragement from Bruce.
glass body.
So can you say
Not much
maybe
angle available on the camera, though. The camera looks pretty fixed, doesn't it? I guess it's got a downward-facing camera as well. Can you catch fish with it?
I suppose you could do. It's designed to go for water samples. So if you've got a lake and you want to go out to the middle of it, you don't have to now. So you send this, you put the water sample collection bottle on it. The camera is fixed forwards only at the moment. I mean, it could have a version with it gimbalized, but you don't really need it when you're just going out to get water samples and do.
Nobody thought of a boat?
Come on. No, they need a drone. Come on. They need a drone so it can land on the water, collect the samples, and then come back faster to the shore. Come on, Bruce.
I heard of a guy who...
I mean, if it was a swampy area or it's very marshy and you can't get to the bank at all because it's too weeds or you've got a lot of weeds in the lake and stuff like that, all you're going to do is put a boat in, it's going to get wound up in the prop, and that's it. The boat's...
No, that's why you...
Tell the Floridians.
Come on, that's why you have swamp boats.
Yeah,
in the case like you just laid out, I would do the same thing. But that's, so that seems like a reasonable application. But I've seen cases where there's some guy who was doing, I think it was bathymetric or sonar scans of a lake or something like this, and he was dragging a sonar sensor around the lake under a Phantom because people are so like, DJI is the only thing that exists. DJI only makes aircraft. I must do this job with an aircraft. And so he had, 15-minute flight time. It took him all day, when he could, RG pilot or whatever on a boat.
Canoe.
Just, sit back and go some fishing, and just end of the day, you got your data. No drama.
Splash drone. This reinventing the splash drone, really, isn't it? To a degree.
Splash drone.
Yeah, I've seen variations on this several times. They always seem to be yellow. I don't know why yellow and water.
Easy to
I think
find.
the splash drone's orange, isn't it? Fluorescent orange. They fly quite. A lot of those have been sold in New Zealand. They use them for towing fishing lines out past the breakers and dropping them for fishing.
Yeah, commercial fishermen use them here. They do exactly that. The drone fishing is huge here to getting out, and for tuna, for going out to get tuna, which is it's all the way back round to the Scan Eagle. That was tuna, wasn't it? Wasn't it Scan Eagle tuna? I can't remember. Yeah, it was
tuna or salmon, one of the two.
Yeah, so it's amazing. So they go out and drop stuff in, and then other countries use those fishing releases for other devices. But anyway, moving on very swiftly.
Got a story on that one. So
go on then.
Did you see the story where they sent that particular present out, but the drone got its low battery warning, so it returns with its payload?
I think it was an urban myth, to be honest.
No, apparently not so.
Yeah.
I saw some stuff on it, and all I can go is that urban myth, it actually happened. They couldn't cancel the return to home. It was coming back, and that was it brought the payload home.
Just run away from the home position. It's not hard.
Yeah, they weren't that bright to start with, I think.
It's funny that, it's such a small world. I had an air conditioner problem a couple of weeks ago, and I called a local air conditioner company. Guy came over. He's in my basement. He sees all the drones, starts talking, and he says, "I bought this DJI Mavic." And, he's going, "Yeah, it's great. You know anything about it?" I said, "Yeah, I know about it." Yeah, it was great until the battery died. I had it over the river, and it just decided to land right there. There's nothing I could do about it.
Well, yeah, it is amazing, isn't it, how people just don't read the manual. It's such an expensive bit of kit. Friends of mine, I don't know about you guys that fly commercially, but when they have to fly over water, they charge double. That's the first thing you do, is double the fees, because it's,
Come on, Gary, do you read the manual of your car? You don't read the manual of your car.
Yeah, I come from, my first experience in engineering was in automotive, and what we were trained on was you cannot assume that anybody's going to read the manual. You have to for the better idiot. And I mean, it gets back to when I first joined. You guys were talking about manual flying skills, and that's the problem I have with the concept is it should never just remove the ability for people to take over manual control and fly it back to safely. It should not happen. Until the drone is to the point where it is completely autonomous and does not need human interaction, it should never completely prevent the human pilot from operating it.
It's a Boeing drone, not an Airbus drone. Hey, Gary, when you say charge double, does that mean that they put so much power in the batteries that they puff and provide flotation?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what you do. That's exactly what you do.
You guys have no idea the requirements that you have to fly on over water.
All I do if I'm over water is I just up my battery warnings. All my battery warnings go up. I won't dare have it on 20%. I just wind everything up, and I'll just wind it up to like 40%. My first warning, I'm coming back, and I'll be landing.
It's quite an easy way to say it's over water. I'll charge you double. You do that as well to your batteries, and you come home with twice as much money.
Yeah. I just took a teaspoon of cement and harden up. I mean,
I used to take water was my safety net. I bought my first Inspire
Water
one.
was my safety net.
I bought my first Inspire one, and I took it out 200, 300 meters over water and let it hover there for 15 minutes. What's the worst that could happen? At least if it's going to crash, it's not going to hit anyone at that point, isn't it? So
I don't know, but I'm looking forward to the mini-series. Water was my safety net. A drama in 5 parts.
I'm looking forward to the headline: "Skin diver killed by falling drone."
Exactly.
I knocked out a
diver?
trout.
You watching Jacques Cousteau or something? Skin diver? Who calls him that
Showing
anymore?
my age. Man with an aqualung.
How dangerous these things are, man. What's the worst thing that can happen? It's not like it's a cruise missile.
Have you watched my channel? That's where the worst things that can happen occur.
If you go and read the requirements that you have to comply to fly on some around some industrial installations that are water based, you'll get absolutely crazy.
Black water, Louis? That really thick kind of black water that comes from dinosaurs? Is that what we're talking about?
No, not even those. Those are even worse. Let's just say that you have to do some wind turbines, those sea-based wind turbines, and you have to fly around one of those. Oh my God, the requirements are crazy. The health and safety, the anti-pollution regulations that the drone has to comply are mind-blowing. It's crazy. Yeah, I understand why they want to keep the sea clean. So yeah.
Have you seen what they do with those cruise liners? They throw all that stuff over the side. So what's one drone going to cause? There's no problem there.
See, I've always wanted an auto-destruct button for a drone. If you ever want, you want one to come down in a fireball.
I can give you some. Some
a big switch with do not touch on. That'll work well on it. Every controller, big guarded gauge switch, do not touch.
How quick could you get a lipo to go up if you directly shorted it on the way down?
You have those CO2 bullets that auto-inflate when they touch the water. If you run them the other way, the CO2 cartridge will go and puncture the entire drone.
Puncture the lipo on the way down. It's good.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to, if it's going down, you may as well let it go down in flames.
I tried that with.
Don't you even mention that on your Sora assessment? Don't do it.
I had a 6S 22,000 milliamp hour battery that had gone bad, and I was bored, so I decided to have some fun with it. So I put on all my welding gear out to an empty gravel pit, and I drove a nail through it. Nothing happened.
No, it's always the same.
It has to be charged first. You got to charge them up.
Yeah.
I had one go up on the bench here 6 weeks ago when I was in here. So I was very lucky. I sat here and I just heard a puff, and I thought, that's weird. And then I remembered there was a battery on charge. But yeah, I put a nail through a few, and they don't tend to go up when you want them to, just not when they don't.
Oh dear. Now, Bruce, and you didn't manage to get those young guys. Tell me more about those youngsters flying their machine on that from your latest video. Now that was on XJet, I think, wasn't it? That video, I can't remember.
Yeah, and I just put another one up of the second plane. Okay.
So there's tell me more.
2 videos. Yeah, they rang me last week and said, "Can we come and fly at the airfield?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "But the weather's not very good," and it wasn't very good. It was misty, and probably failed to meet the minimum visual requirements for line of sight flying. Who cares? But they rolled up with these 2 huge planes made out of foam and fiberglass, watching Chris's channel, and they picked up the tips from carve the foam, lay it with fiberglass. One of them had a F4 flight controller with iNav in it. The other one had an Arduino board in it, because he had a very simple transmitter. He couldn't get enough mixes on his transmitter to do the ruddervator and the flaperons. So he mixed it all in an Arduino board on the plane, which was kind of good. I thought it was kind of clever. So it shows how these kids are thinking, and they're applying engineering skills, aerodynamic skills, electronic skills, software skills to this whole thing. And the thing that worries me most is that if the regulators get their way, we won't be seeing this anymore in the future, because why would you, when it takes more paperwork, more tests, more regulation, more registrations to fly one of these than it does to fly a paraglider or an ultralight, why would anyone even bother? And it's really concerning.
Outside.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns in the UK, because they're bringing in all the rules and regs. You've got certain things, this and the other. If you lose the kids, the hobby's dead. It's like my model club. It will only survive for as long as the last member's there, and we're all getting older. So we need these young guys, these 14-year-olds that do this stuff. We need them to come into our clubs. We need them. That's the future of our hobby. It's so important we keep them coming.
Yeah, but the regulators need the hobbyist to come in here and prop up the numbers so this deal makes sense. I mean,
there's also that, yes.
Well, even this FAA thing that they just dog and pony show that AUVSI grafts, 379 off of people to hear bogus stuff from federal employees their taxes pay for. We got 1 million something registered, RC aircraft people. First of all, the numbers are totally bogus, because they had to throw them all out in 2017 because of the Taylor case. I did a story about that. And then you have, we have 180,000 certificated 107s. Well, 40,000 of them are current. So you're really talking about building a UTM and a regulatory scheme and RID and all the rest of this, let's say, job creation for the FAA for, 100,000 people, if that. And who knows how regular they're flying, because the regulations are so family show. Looking for another word there. But the regulations are such that this business cannot scale. They talk about, at the IPPs, you can do drone delivery. Well, that doesn't scale outside of the IPP. So it's like a magical game preserve. So the only way this deal works is to hit the hobbyist, so you have enough numbers where you can say, well, this is something that's needed. And I contend, we still have people flying ultralights in and stolen aircraft from Mexico delivering drugs, You
have a whole submarine trade, don't you? There's a drug submarine trade down south there, and they rock up and then they just dump the submarines on the beach. So you have a mini sub litter problem on the Florida coast.
Well, it turns out that there's money in blow. People.
Yeah, apparently so.
People, I don't know, they're moving it, but so my point with it is you have some kid out here flying some foam aircraft, and, you need to take a test. You need to, register your aircraft. Oh, you could get hammered. Oh, you got to be at some special place. I mean, who's going to do all that? You just go smoke cigarettes and drink beer behind the bowling alley, It's cheaper and easier.
But enough about Bruce. They're amazing sets of skills. When you look at their aircraft, I don't know. I would love to see what the design thought process was behind all that and what they did. I mean, it's a hoon of a lot of engineering work went into that. It got off the ground and flew very nicely. Okay, some pitch issues, but nothing that they won't solve. And
it was a year. I think he said it took him a year overall to build the thing. So it's a pretty big investment of time to build something like that. And as Patrick's saying, I mean, when it suits them, the regulators like to include the hobby because it boosts the numbers. But then when it comes down to the representation, the hobby doesn't count. Here in New Zealand, I got some information today. Our Civil Aviation Authority has spent almost $250,000 on surveys because they're not getting the answers they want. So they keep doing more surveys, and eventually they're hoping they'll get the answers they want to support their case. They have done so many surveys, $250,000 in surveys, and they don't listen to anybody. It's like, what's going on? Talk about job crash, and the survey companies must be rolling in it. It's terrible. Oh, hang on. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that. They haven't decided on my investigation yet. Oh.
I think we could have a survey, actually. Let's have a survey.
It's a sharp stick. I shall poke this bear with a sharp stick. That'll fix things.
Come on, Bruce. Your investigation was decided from the get-go. They already knew that you're going to jail, so they just have to come up with the best charges.
So this is why Ghislaine Maxwell sent me a "See you soon" card. Now it all falls into place.
Well, I mean, look, everybody, you can't only, I mean, we've fallen into a trap here. So we remember the big forecast. It said $89 billion industry or whatever. All of the CEAs around the world were like, oh, we're going to hit the jackpot here. This is going to be great. This is going to revitalize aviation, which, I got into it, believe it or not, with someone on Twitter the other day, and they're like, oh, you're the joke of the industry. I go, oh, you like jokes? Well, drive by the municipal airport because you're going to see a howler over there. GA is dying in this country. This used to be a country where people enjoyed, aviation, and now you have to be really rich to afford it, or be partial owner in a plane, which costs a fortune, and lots of rules and regs they keep putting on there, blah blah blah. But anyway, what we're seeing in this, we're getting hit with a triple whammy. One is the regulations are stupid. Two, it can't scale. I know Gary's aware of this too, but I mean, how long the standards? 15 years. And I think still Brazil is the only country that has adopted one of the ASTM standards for UAS. Yeah, well, we're going to do global harmonization. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. They're not doing anything. So the business.
What worries me, sorry, Patrick, I keep biting on you, but what worries me with that is countries then stand up and say, oh, well, we're thinking of adopting the ASTM standards because they're so popular everywhere. And as you say it, then you think, do they not? They're only using them in Brazil. They're not that popular.
Well, Para Zero uses one. You got to, that whole payola deal where you got to buy the parachute system and there's like an ASTM kit. You buy that, and they'll even tell you, don't even file for the waiver until you've purchased your parachute system, which doesn't really work from certain altitudes and blah, blah, blah. It's a payola thing. You got the last FAA administrator over there, Golden Parachute Huerta. These people, everybody, oh, he's so negative. It's like, are you asleep? Are you stupid? I mean, the handwriting's on the wall, unless you have lobbyists. You're getting an extended visual line of sight waiver, which big whoop, you're not going to do anything with that. And the thing isn't scaling. So you're not going to generate the money that is going to support a UASIO that's blowing through $29 million a year. It's just not happening.
The money's there in the industry, I think, and money's being made, and new companies are coming on that are making sensible money, but that's because they're using the thing as a tool. It's not convincing. No. Like companies like Louis' companies, people that are doing surveys, companies that are already grown-up companies, already doing grown-up jobs that need the data. They're using gear, making money, and cracking on.
But that's always
it's not. The thing is, it's not the drones. It's the
Right.
data.
No,
that
the
we collect.
data. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we've seen this from day one, Gary. I mean, we've had conversations about this. The drone has always augmented an existing business. If you have an
Yeah.
existing business where you could go, oh, I'm going to use this as a data collection tool, it works. Now,
Yeah.
the rest of this, like drone delivery and,
Yeah, but that doesn't fit in the VC narrative, does it? That doesn't fit in the quick. Let's make up a 3D rendering. Let's get a suit and let's hire a big bar somewhere and have a splashy opening. What should we do? Actually, it sounds like a really good idea. Well, what should we do? But no, it just doesn't fit with that narrative. And that 3DR was very much in that.
yeah, but responsible companies, like, let's look at the railroads. The railroads predate most civil aviation authorities. They've been moving stuff around for 150 years longer, depending upon where you are in the world. But I mean, that's what they do. Energy companies. I talked to a guy today as a consultant. Accidents are not tolerated in energy, let's say, exploration and transfer. They work very hard not to have accidents. So these people already have like safety risk management programs and the rest of that. And they are the people that can add a 2-pound drone or a 1-pound drone to their, let's say, workflow and not really worry about bringing down the airliner and things like that. It scientifically, we can figure out it could be done. This could scale today. It could have scaled 10 years ago. There is a effort to sandbag this. There's a lot of money to be made. I've been doing a few stories about this lately. I mean, everybody's making money hand over fist. The advocates and the experts and the consultants.
Everyone, Patrick.
Everyone.
The PowerPointers, the guys that do nice PowerPoints, those are the guys that are making the big money.
Well, I have a story that contradicts much of what you just said, yet reinforces your point. In 2016 summer, there was an incident in Canada, a Lac-Mégantic train disaster, where they had a train, it was loaded with 50 some odd cars of oil. And it was a small rail line, and they basically, they were done for the day. They parked the train on top of a hill overlooking a small town. And it was time for the crew of the train to go sleep. So they went to sleep. They didn't set the brakes on the train. The train went down the hill. It crashed in the town. 50 people were killed.
So
that was about 5 years ago. Pardon?
So what happened there is that they didn't follow the procedure.
There was a lot of holes. There was a lot of it's identified that there's a need for regulatory reform. You basically, I think there was rules, you had to set the brakes, but we now needed rules to make sure that you can't leave the train without setting the brakes. There's a lot of stuff that went wrong. There was a fire on it all started. There's a whole bunch of failures that cascaded that led to this. There was a fire on the train, but then they left and it was a disaster. Anyway, point is, it's been 5 years since that happened. Transport Canada has not stopped that from happening again. In fact, there was another case a couple of years later where it happened again. Nobody died, but they had left a train loaded with oil on top of a hill, and the brakes weren't set.
Yeah, but
Transport Canada hasn't fixed that yet. But we have, I've got rules regulating my little helicopters.
Right, but look, certified aircraft crash all the time. 2018, we've had 393 GA deaths in the United States. AOPA, the reason we got regulation or a ban was because AOPA wanted an equivalent level of safety, and they had enough juice at the time to get the FAA to throw the brakes on. Okay? So now we're at a situation where there's enough data to show, they keep talking about these millions of people, there's enough data to show that for fatalities, drones are safer than GA. So if this, let's say, sector or community had any advocacy, they would be pushing that point. Wait a minute, you said you want an equivalent level of safety. We haven't had any deaths. We've got millions of hours. We could extrapolate the numbers like the airlines do. Say this is so safe. What are you doing here? You are just stifling an industry, killing an industry for no good reason. That's where I think we are now. If this thing scales, there'll be room for more hardware manufacturers. As it is now, it's people like Louis' company, existing business model, adding the drones. I think that market has pretty much been saturated. Maybe people will need to buy some new equipment, whatever, and I'm sure new stuff will come out or whatever else. But, consumer drones, I think, are the Mavic Air. Do the kids really need to be regulated the way that they are? We had a lot of regulations on commercial airliners, and you saw these guys, learned how to fly planes and not land them and crash them into a bunch of towers. The whole deal's nuts. It's a job creation. And until we come together as a community and say, hey, look, you guys work for us. We're not putting up with this anymore. And get our lobbyists to work in our favor instead of compartmentalized lobbying for specific companies that are trying to mandate up some customers, we'll be talking about this until 2047.
2047. The running joke that Patrick and I have had since 2008.
I think the regulators would argue against your point that we have enough data to show this is safe. What they would argue is
they could try.
Is it's only safe because we've kept you in this little box, and so only the little box is safe. And now you're asking,
have you been on YouTube?
We don't have data on that. That's what they'll say. I know it's not true.
I don't care what they say. That's just not true, because you can go on YouTube and they're not enforcing their policy, and people are doing whatever the hell they want to do, and that's globally. So you could say that. What, Bruce?
Compliance is very low. That's why our CAA in New Zealand is spending a heap of money on YouTube ads, and but the finish line on their ads is share the skies. No, I can't believe this is share. No, segregate the skies, segment the skies. Don't share them, because that's telling people it's okay to fly when there's aircraft as long as you're careful. No, you want to be saying no, keep well away from aircraft. It's like conflicting things that people that did this obviously don't have a clue what they're trying to achieve. And it's like, as I said in a video on the subject, they have to be seen to be doing something, and the best way to be seen to be doing something is to spend money on it. And that's it. Doesn't matter about the outcome. It's we've spent $50,000 on safety. We're $50,000 safer, even though the outcome of that $50,000 spend may be completely negative, because now people are saying, "Oh, we can fly with airplanes as long as we share the skies."
And those youngsters, what do they aim to do with their aircraft? Are they where's that journey going for them? Is that a school project that they're going to get $1 million? God, if I was teaching, they would get $1 million points for that. But where are they going with that project?
I don't know. I think it's a hobby, obviously, but I dare say that it's like anyone that's interested enough to build stuff like that obviously would like to take it on as a career later on. Usually that's what happens. You have anyone in aviation, you get interested in aviation, and you get so passionate about it that you'll take a really scum job just to get your hours up. You'll be a flight instructor or fly freight somewhere until you've got enough hours up to become a pilot with epaulets, which makes you really, really good. That's the way it goes. And unmanned aviation is exactly the same.
Yeah, and I got to go back though to that. They cannot. The enforcement is not there. People. Even in the case with Precision Hawk was doing whatever they wanted to do all over California for like 15 months, and Jeremy Grogren sitting at his desk in D.C. and there's no problem, no safety of the nest problem, which that flies in the face of what people just said we're flying out here. But also, you have the if you look at the YouTube. You read the news. If it works so good on drones, then we really need to put that over on GA and ground GA until GA can prove that, they're not going to have any fatalities.
Well, I'm just doing a video on that. Every GA pilot should have a spotter in the passenger seat because of the limited situational awareness. If we have to have it for FPV, you've got to have it in GA, because look how many mid-airs there's been just a few weeks ago. Another mid-air, 8 people die. You can't tell me that someone on the ground needs it, but someone in the plane doesn't.
No, it's been a terrible couple of weeks for GA as people are coming out of lockdown or whatever rules are changing in whichever country they're in. So they're coming out, they're not current, they're going flying, and then they're going home in a box. There's been loads of accidents, loads and loads of fatalities. It's terrible. And it's a false equivalence we're being held to, really. And Ian said it earlier. We could back around to Ian's, what harm could it do? And it pains me to say, yes, he's right. And generally, in most situations, what harm could the things do? You've got to be going especially out your way.
Well, regulators hate us because what we do is intrinsically safe, so they have nothing to do.
Right. Well, it's like anything else. Almost every human action or thing that there's risk associated with it. So if you do not want risk, then you have to stay in the basement, and you can still get hurt down there. But whatever the case, so some risk is going to have to be. You can't say that there's zero risk or zero chance. That's not how you build an industry. That's not how you invigorate an ecosystem, an aerospace ecosystem or a high-tech ecosystem. And, if your country doesn't want that, then I would say go with the draconian rules. That's what's happening here in the United States. And, I hate to see it happen. It's really kind of a sad thing. And all these kids that have the passion for aviation have no outlet. And the other thing, I was at a job fair. I met two, they're citizens, but they're of Indian descent, and they were aeronautic structural engineers. And they're like, we can't get jobs. We've been trying to get jobs. They were twins. For 8 years or 8 months, we've been trying to get jobs. Everybody's talking about, we got to have, diversity and women and all the rest of this in aviation and engineering. And then people are like, do they have security clearances? Because I'll hire them right now if they have a top secret security clearance, which costs about $25,000. So the opportunities you have stem.
Wow, they cost money over there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you want to get one, you're like when the Sandy Wars thing. If you wanted to be a contractor, towards the end when sequestration kicked in, you could get your own if you wanted to pay for it. And top secret could cost you $25,000. When they did mine, they went and talked to people I worked with in 3 states and interviewed all my neighbors and talked to
does that introduce, if you're paying for it, doesn't that rather introduce the ability to pay for a dodgy one?
Well, no, because they have, people there, sworn investigators, and they come in and do that. But they don't just like write a check for that. They take it out of your pay or whatever if you want to be a contractor, but it costs money. So the pipeline isn't really dumps out into the ocean or whatever, and there's not really a lot of these jobs for people. And I think that's because we have diminished capability with our aerospace sector and consolidation. Look at the thing with Boeing and the 737 MAX. There's been so much consolidation. All of these aircraft companies have been consolidated. The people that are at the Civil Aviation Authority don't have the expertise to even know what's going on. You can bamboozle them. Boeing's covering for the FAA. FAA's covering for Boeing. Who wants to ride on a 737 MAX? Show of hands. It's all better now. Come on.
On the Boeing 737 MAX, do you see that YASA turn around and says, no, we're not accepting what you've done so far. You've got to put triple redundancy in on your airspeed sensors and more, because it says if one goes wrong, it can give false data. You've got a second backup. It's not good enough. We want 3 on everything. So Boeing have got to go back again. If it's going to fly across Europe anyway, they've got to satisfy YASA now as well. And in the comments somebody mentioned earlier, it all depends whether Boeing or Airbus buy Skydio or the others, Parrot. I would contend that DJI, Skydio or Parrot may end up buying Boeing or Airbus one day. I don't think it's the other way around. I think two industries are dying there and 3 industries are moving forward.
And Patrick was quite right before when he said, you can't eliminate risk. In fact, people that try to eliminate risk are on a fool's errand. You can manage risk, and all we can do is manage it down to an acceptable level, like we do with road traffic. If we halve the open road speed limit, we could reduce the number of deaths or fatalities in motor accidents, but we don't do it. We could reduce the risk, but we don't, because we're happy to accept that level of risk for the benefit it presents, which means we get from A to B quicker. It's the same with aviation. We cannot manage risk out of the skies. We can only bring it down to a level that's acceptable. And the real key is choosing what is an acceptable level. I think 0 deaths from drone operations is way too much. We need to halve it.
Yeah, from someone that
the world has just sat there.
assessments, you don't eliminate risk. You manage risk, and you must present mitigation measures for the risk. And you have to reduce the risk, but to acceptable levels.
And how do you manage it without a proper assessment so you can scope and scale the factors?
You just keep guessing until you get a consulting job
Well,
that's $800,000 a year,
Yeah, and there are guys.
Well, you do what every government has just done.
Specialized to do those SORA assessments. You pay them, and they just copy paste a bunch of measures, and they charge you through the roof.
Go, Ian, go now.
You don't need risk assessments. You don't need risk assessments. You need to just do what every government in the world has just done. We've got thousands of people dying every day, but the economy's in meltdown. So we're going to toss all the risk assessments out the window and send everybody back to carry on. That's the reality. They pick and choose when the risk assessment suits them. Yeah. If you take the human malware situation, for instance, no one would be leaving their houses for the next 10 years if you were going to use the same level of risk assessment that we would use against drones today. The reality is we accept risk when it suits us. When it doesn't suit us, everyone throws it up and goes, "Oh no, you're not allowed to do that." Cotton wool.
I haven't got a red card, but I have got a red lipo. That's your warning, Ian. That's a red card for common sense. Yeah,
that's one of my favorite. I forget who said this, but if the automobile was just invented today, right? So you imagine you got these automobiles, and somebody's like, okay, so we're gonna have these vehicles. They're gonna have so much excess power. They'll go way too fast, right, for people to be able to control. So what are we gonna do? That's not safe. Well, we'll just tell them not to. Okay. Well, now they're going to drive directly at each other, right? We're going to have these roadways. They'll drive right at each other. Why are you going to stop them from hitting each other? We're going to paint a line down the center of the road, tell people stay to the right. Everything will be fine, right? It would never happen if the car was invented today.
Can I stay to the left? Can I stay to the left?
Yeah. As in the Romans, will stay to the left. Yeah, it's trust other nations to change the way it works. Do
you know why we drive on the left?
I do.
Because the Romans
to avoid oncoming cars.
No, it actually allegedly it goes back to the medieval days, and it was to do with jousting and battle because you're right hand. So if you're on the left, and you're striking with the right, and that's why we drive on the left in the UK.
And do you know why the Americans drive on the right?
Guns. They got guns. They don't need taking shit.
No, well, so it was because in America they were moving a lot more freight. Okay, and so they tended to have horse teams, right? Not just one horse. You're not one man riding a horse. You had a team of horses, and you had a whip, and you had to sit on the left of the vehicle with your whip in your right hand, so you can whip both horses, right? And since you're on the left, it's more convenient to be on the right. You can see the clearance as you go by somebody.
Yeah, well, if we're going down this road, that's like why spiral staircases in castles go round, is it clockwise, so that when you're defending from the top, you can lay into somebody.
Yeah.
So why do pilots sit in the left? Why do pilots sit in the left seat?
I don't know about the pilots, but I do know on spiral staircases they make one step slightly different. So those in the castle know that step is wrong. Anyone invading it doesn't take the advantage.
Yeah.
I'd still fall down it.
So why are pilots on the left? Bruce?
I don't know. I was asking.
Genuine curiosity. Well, but that's the thing. If you're flying an aircraft, you are two seats at the front. You sit on the left. If you're flying a helicopter, you sit on the right.
That's because you got a collective free with the down beside the door instead of in the middle of the seat.
Yeah, exactly right. But why wouldn't they have? Yeah, why wouldn't they have made it the same for both types for whatever anyway, just silliness.
I'm blaming it on those Romans.
It is the Romans. We descended
Roman aircraft. They said on the right.
Exactly.
Risk and historical stuff. I'm reading the autobiography of Igor Sikorsky, which was actually written in like '68 or something. But it's fascinating to see what they did in those days to get to where we are now. But if if we had the same risk adversity back then that they do now, we never would have what we have now. I mean,
there's that wonderful video clip of him in his hat when it goes into ground resonance and he bounces out through the blades, doesn't he? He gets bounced right out through the blades.
So he was the first one to design, I think, a 4-engine plane, and people thought it couldn't even fly. I mean, the understanding of aerodynamic aero engineering back then was, so rudimentary. People thought you just can't fly. There's a natural law; it can only be so big. But he proved it could be done. But they actually had his second one he made. There was a deck on top of the fuselage. You could go up, and stand on top, and just look out while you're flying. And then they had walkways on the wings, so that the mechanic could go out to the engine and change the spark plugs on the engines while they're flying, because that was needed.
Yeah, I know. And then we've got some youngsters at Tokoroa who have CNC cut foam, so they've learned skills, computer skills for that. They've got hot wire skills. They've worked out their engines. They've worked out programmed an Arduino to sort out some channel mixing.
They even had a specialized adjustment of the angle of the motor.
That's right.
Oh my God, it's so high tech.
Well, we
high tech solutions to high tech problems are always the best ones.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm impressed, and
I was surprised when I saw, because with those tiny little motors and flying, and it flew quite well. It shouldn't be very windy, but it flew quite well. So
I was surprised it had enough power. I mean, because I thought the tiny motors, it'll never get off the ground, but it wasn't full throttle for the flight. It was just cruising around. Amazing.
Yeah. I'd like to know why he selected that aerofoil as well. He did a pretty complicated aerofoil for what it was. Looked like a glider foil of some sort, but
it did have a bit of the big one had a lot of camber in it too. So I think under camber, so it's probably high lift, low speed.
Yeah. It was something to do with their airfoil choice, and if they stop copying the birds with the wing flapping, they might. But that's a minor thing because it was pretty flexible. But no, it was an excellent job. So they're to be commended. And isn't it a pity that it's our generation that's allowing this all to slide away for the youngsters? Well, I know this group isn't, but largely people are looking the other way, and terrible things are happening, and it's not on. I say. And on that note, what else have we got to talk about? Otherwise, I think we should depart, because we are descending into nightly nonsense about swords and spiral staircases.
Well, on the glider thing, is anybody still flying gliders, or is that pretty much?
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, you should mention that.
Go to ArduPilot and you'll get the soaring feature of ArduPilot.
But that's not flying, is it? It's not a pilot flying. It's a computer flying.
No, it's not. It's the wind flying your plane. Come on, Bruce.
The whole thing with flying a glider was trying to keep hitting the thermals and keep it in the air and see how high you could get.
Exactly what it does.
Yeah, we're doing that autonomously now.
Yeah.
Again, you're not doing it. The software's doing it. The program is doing it.
Is that what we're here for?
Man overcoming nature.
On that point, I'll mention one of the primary ArduPilot developers, one of the big guys, is working for a company now, and they did a record-setting flight last week or two. Have you talked about it already?
No, we haven't talked about it. And they're gonna
flight of 12 hours.
12 hours. Yeah. And he said it was record-setting. They came down after 12 hours with 80% battery capacity left. And I said, I asked him, what's record-setting about that? Because I've heard of people doing better than that. But they did it with it was a useful aircraft with a useful payload, right? It wasn't just an aircraft designed to set a record. It was actually a useful machine. So I thought that was pretty. And
the only reason they landed was
it's all in the quality, and it was painted blue with hardware from Czechoslovakia, flown by a guy named Bill on a Tuesday.
And don't forget, on the ArduPilot, if there's anyone with the DJI FPV system, check out Alex's post in the dev section. He's still got my system. He's still testing it. Hopefully we'll have full support for that in the next release. Louis. Next
I
release,
At 50
Louis.
megabits a second.
I know, but I'm so over the DJI FPV guys.
You
Come
can
on,
get
we
13
have
kilometers.
to go forward that. Now
Ah.
it's everything Oculus Rift, so you can look all around. You put a 360 camera on the drone.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
come on, it's
I want that.
completely different. Come on.
Watch
Also,
my video.
I want-
The 10 worst things about digital FPV. You watch
And
that
when
video
I'm
when it
sat
comes
in
out.
my luxury ground control caravan or at the Drones Club here at Vertiport Africa, I want that 360 camera on the roof, and then I want screens all around me to see a synthetic picture of all the aircraft and stuff around me, as if I'm looking out the window while
Why
I'm
don't you
having
just
a
look
big-
out the window? It's cheaper.
No.
Have you
No.
tried it yet, Bruce?
How am I ever going to render that? How am I ever going to render and get VC money for looking out the window?
I haven't tried it, Ian, but I watched Tommy, oh my God's FPV videos with the 360 on the quad. It just looks so fantastic. It's really, I've always wanted to do a camera on a big stick out the back looking forward, and that gives you exactly that effect. You know, it's like being detached from the quad, and the fact that the drone actually moves in relation to the camera as well is just
good,
brilliant.
isn't
It's
it?
like being tailed. Yeah.
I did laugh at that 10-kilometer flight where the guy had his co-pilot or his spotter on the back wing as he was flying on the way back, and he rotated the camera all the way around. There's a little Lego man sitting on the back of the
observer.
plane. The observer. That's
Always
how he
in
was
visual
doing
line
it.
of sight.
And
12
the thing
kilometers.
The thing is, perhaps you guys don't know, with a specific brand of 360 cameras, you can easily emulate the flight of drones. So you move the camera around on a selfie stick, and then the way you edit it, it really looks like a flight of a drone. So,
Or you could just use a drone.
no, come on, it's so much easier to just use the selfie stick, Bruce.
But you and Gary look for high-tech solutions to low-tech problems. How do you blow your nose? You got the machine for that?
No,
There's no registration with the selfie stick. And on a more important note, Gary, when are you going to come up here? I'm ready to rough it in the plumbing. When are you getting up here?
I'm not sure you can afford me. I'm not sure you can afford my plumbing.
Get your tools and get crap.
I remember that the laptop I drowned, I fixed as well. So it did. The poor autopilot, I fixed it. I left it in the rain for 2 days. I blame Alex because he asked me to test something at 11:30 at night because he sleeps as little as I do. So I went out the garden with a Hawk, the FPV system on it, 11 o'clock in the pitch black, tested it, left the laptop out there, came back in, went away for 2 days, and it was torrential rain. So I come back in, the laptop had been sitting out in the rain for 2 days. But it survived. That's how good Macs are. It survived 2 days of rain.
Well, I was quite tenuous flying that drone in the rain. Yesterday I was out there and I could hardly see the lens was all covered in water. I'm thinking, how long before the flight controller decides to give up? But I did a full three-minute flight and landed and wrung it out, and it was good.
One of the things. Sorry, I was just saying, one of the things I really liked was the land ahead decision making they made when they thought, "Oh, this isn't going very well," and they just landed ahead. And I thought that was mature. That was cool. I thought that was very good.
Especially when they were considering flying it from a school football field originally. I don't think that would have turned out too well.
Okay, fair enough. Now, should we draw a line under this? Are we ready? Are we ready to go? Are we ready to depart? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Go on. Here we go.
Last week, the guys of PX4 did their annual conference, and they had some interesting talks for people more inclined to the development side and the nitty-gritty stuff. Check out the PX4 YouTube channel. They recorded some of the conferences. We even had our good old friend Paul Risenborough, Mr. EKF man, on there. So we can always learn something coming from where it comes, but it's good to learn.
Yeah, I watched a few of them, but it was very, as you say, developer-centric, wasn't it? More than anything, most of them.
Yeah.
Right, it's time to go. Wherever you are in the world, be safe, as this increasingly weirdly gets worse everywhere, including, as I mentioned before we started, they've stopped alcohol sales here again.
5G.
Which 5G, yeah, it's 5G's fault. It's 5G's fault.
If only the Earth wasn't flat, we wouldn't have this trouble.
Is Kumi
Yeah,
Kumi?
I read it was the cigarettes too. So
cigarettes have never. They were banned back in March and haven't been unbanned since, and people are paying an absolute fortune for. Well, you say that people say it's an absolute fortune here, but cigarettes were cheap as chips before, so they're still a packet of 40 cigarettes is still not the price it would be in the UK. But people are moaning like Billio here, and there's his 5G hat.
And until Huawei are gone, I'm wearing this.
Fair enough.
And hence the vertiport tobacco crop. Correct?
Well, funny you should mention that. Several of the children at the school I teach are tobacco farmers or their parents are tobacco farmers further up country. So whilst... And the other form of tobacco that's very popular in most of the world grows abundantly here, wild. It's just everywhere. So the forms of smoking are available. But people have got more tribal about that than they have, I shouldn't say tribal really, but I can, I'm in Africa, say tribal. They've got more tribal about that than the mask wearing or anything else, the no cigarettes. People have got.
But you're sticking with the bubble pipe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got a bubble machine. Yeah, I had to fix it for the kids earlier. Anyway, it's madness. But we'll see you in this crazy world next week, dear viewers. Look after yourselves, 2100 GMT, and we will again, no doubt, talk nonsense. And I'm going to go home and find out about. I'm at home. I'm going to go upstairs and read up about medieval weaponry so that I'm versed and able to answer any silly questions about driving directions, things like that. Look after yourselves, everybody. See you next week. Cheers for now. Thanks, gentlemen. Bye bye. And 1 button, 2 buttons.